The place is Vorisberg, the year 1987, und the air of the camp grows stale with the waft of socks und sauerkraut und socks with sauerkraut in them. We feel pinned in from all sides. We hear across the cold, desolate field cries of "Give me back the apron" and "That's my Walkman." Barold hasn't moved in hours. His piercing mauve lips staring a hole in the snow of the trench with wanton abandon. A call comes in from HQ, and apparently all the pickled fish was rerouted outside of Ingolstadt, and now there will be no lunchtime festivities for many days. I've taken to not wearing underpants. My genitals serve little use to me now, and may as well be a source of humor for the men. A violent incident earlier involving a Rick Astley cassette tape and some neon sweatbands have left Heimlich with only one ear. To try and raise spirits, I have introduced an accordion into the center of the room on a little stool. No one goes near it, and instead eyes it superstitiously like a chicken may be wary of the fox. There is no end to any of this but death. The mail messenger with the parcel for Klaus brings us no closer to the truth and hardly any joy, as his Tapau poster that he has been waiting for has arrived ripped. His Simply Red Singles collection provides him little to no warmth. I stop Helmut from whistling like a virgin in the corridors so as not to excite the hounds that nonchalantly lick their bones with a heavy sense of ennui. The atmosphere is thick and dry, like the lint I found one day into my belly button after wearing my regimental singlet with 9 undershirt. We chew occasionally on salted beefs that we have been sleeping on, but the food brings us 9 sustenance and 9 cents of well-being. I take to removing all the red stickers from my bargain bin Rubik's Cube. There is nothing here but despair. That was The Winter of 1987, read, as always, by Herb Wiener Dumpling. Part 7 will be tomorrow between Topless Gardening with Donald North and soap opera All the Hedges, in which Alan finds a new use for a trowel and Celia has a close call when the priest reveals he's really a Berkshire pony named Eric, her long-lost son. And now on Radio Flange Goblet, it's the After Movie Diner, which this week features 37 individual uses of the letter Q. So hello and welcome back to another episode of the After Movie Diner, and this week it's another exceptionally special episode as we have a returning champion back on the show. He's an even bigger international superstar at this point since last he was on. He's taken a break out of his busy life of being a father, working a job and recording a brand new album of poop songs. Yes, it's none other than the massive local legend himself, Mr. Matt Farley. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, John. I'm doing great, and I love all your formats, and I'm glad you're back. You're bringing this format back a little bit after being just a diner guy for over a year. You were just a diner guy, right?
Yeah, and I'm doing this whole big relaunch of the website. I'm going to be taking it off Blogger and possibly putting it on Squarespace. I'm going to go a little bit high-tech and a little bit modern with it for lots of different reasons. But I'm very excited about it, and I want everyone listening to hopefully help us with that by going to Patreon and sponsoring us, or indeed buying an album or anything like that, or just writing a review. Anything to kind of get us more notice would be great. But also I thought, well, why not really put my heart and love into what I originally dug about doing everything, like doing the website and doing the podcast and everything, which was the chance to do some music, the chance to do some comedy, and the chance to talk to my many friends and colleagues around this wonderful globe. And so while the diner shows will remain, I'm going to still go out with Jim once a week and see movies and things. I'm just, when we don't have that episode, I'm going to call on you guys and we're going to talk again. I'm going to love it. That's just going to make me happy again. It's going to be good.
Great, yeah. Because just like I said, I like it all. Yeah, and I love the bickering between you and Jim. You guys will just like a little point, and you just like neither one of you will be able to quite let it go, and you just like back and forth, and you feel a little tension, but it's all good natured.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, that's 30 years. If anything, the Wallace boys, whether it's Jim or whether it's John, there's 30 years of, at this point, brotherly friendship. So, you have that with some of your long-term friends where you can sort of say anything and do anything and you can, rag on each other and it's all good because by the end of the day you hug and make up and it's all great. So, yeah, Jim and I are doing that. We have fun pushing each other's buttons. And just like we did that video of sort of behind the scenes of what it's like to go out with Jim and I to the diner, we're going to do more of those and may even start going live, inspired by your good self, sir, whose Periscope was some of my favorite stuff on Motor and Media Day. So that was great.
Yeah, technology is amazing. I mean, in a few years, we're going to have, the capability to do, semi-professional live TV from your house.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why film companies and TV companies are panicking a little bit. And we, as consumers, I don't know so much in movies because I think movies are becoming big, overblown CGI kind of tentpole things that I'm becoming less and less interested in. But I think in TV, sort of that water cooler, well-produced, well-written, bigger budgeted, bigger starring TV shows, I think we as viewers are only reaping the benefit of that, I think.
It's a golden age.
It is. That's what they tell me. Although, funnily enough, of all the so-called TV that you're meant to watch, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, all the rest of it, I don't partake in any of it.
Neither do I. I don't watch any of those.
No.
I don't watch Downton Abbey either. Or
No.
But like you said, I've been told it's a golden age, so I'm just going with it.
I'm going with it, right, exactly. The funny thing is the two shows I do watch, which is Ash versus the Evil Dead. I've watched every episode of that when it was on Stars. And I also watch a show called My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend because Rachel Bloom
she was on your show,
was on my show. And so it's really, this is how pathetic like podcasting gets because like she was on my show before she was famous. She just did YouTube videos. I mean, she was famous for being on YouTube, but she very graciously agreed to be on my Crosstalk program, which I'm sure she thought was like a bigger show than it actually was. It went out to like 4 people.
I was one of them.
But no, she was on that show. And now I feel like, well, we're old friends. Obviously, we're old friends, so I need to support her and watch her show. Meanwhile, she's winning Golden Globes and, being on every chat show. And, she didn't even know my name. So, but I do actually like her show. I think her show is very funny, well written. And I think that what they're doing is quite subversive because it's on the CW, which is known as this sort of twitty teenage family network that shows sort of Beverly Hills 90210, the remake, and Vampire Diaries, a lot of these sort of fluffy kind of crappy shows to me, to who I am. No disrespect to the people who watch those shows. But then they're doing this sort of subversive adult comedy that's touching on feminism and diversity and bodily functions and sexual activities and all this sort of adult create money and all this stuff that we kind of deal with day to day. And they're doing it on this like fluffy network with this sing-along romantic comedy style. And I kind of like that. I like slipping in something a bit dark and subversive in a sort of twitty sing-along style.
Yeah, you can get away with more in that format. Likewise with animation, you can get away with a lot more animated than you could live action.
Right, exactly. No, that's a great point as well. I was going to ask, considering it is Bruce Campbell's birthday today, and although he's a big old jerk, and he is a big old jerk, Bruce Campbell is a big old jerk now since he had his fame from Burn Notice and then the Evil Dead remake and now the show, he is a big old jerk. However, it is his birthday, and I was going to ask, have you seen, because I know that you're a fan of sort of VHS horror and stuff, have you seen any of Ash vs. Evil Dead? Is that even in your realm at the moment, dude?
No, and I've barely even been exposed to the Evil Dead movies. I'm sorry to admit. It's not really my style. When it comes to 80s horror, I'm a slasher guy. You know, not these over the top kind of showy effects driven things. That doesn't do it for me.
Although there are plenty of over the top slashers that I've seen in my time, and I think you and I share that. I'm definitely a slasher fan. If there is a genre of horror, I mean, I love From Beyond and Reanimator and Evil Dead and zombie movies and stuff like that. But if I'm going to watch any sort of pull anything off the shelf just to watch sort of for a bit of fun, it'll be a slasher movie, because I think that they took a generic format and have beaten it up, changed it, done it the same, turned it around, mixed it. Like, they've done absolutely every permutation of the sort of cookie cutter style of slasher. They've done every different type of thing. And I'm always impressed by that. Like, if you can take 3 chords to put it into music, if you can take 3 chords and sort of make a million songs with that, as people have done, I find that kind of impressive.
Yeah, and likewise, you just have the boogeyman versus the teens, and it's been done in so many different varieties, and I want to see them all.
Yes, I know I do as well. In fact, I actually bought a book called The Slashers Compendium or something like that, and my goal, my bucket list, because my life's goals are so menial, that my bucket list is to see every slasher in this book.
Yeah, well, I was on another podcast just recently called Hello, This is the Doom Show, and we discussed how there's just something about horror that you just want to see them all in a way that you don't want to see every drama. You're not like, there's no drama fans are like, okay, I just want to go back to the beginning of film and just see every drama. Nobody does that, but it's a very legitimate goal for lots of horror fans. And I guess horror, there's few enough horror movies that it's doable.
Yeah, it's almost possible. I have two books, slashers and zombies, and I'm going to kind of work my way through all of them over my entire life. That's the dream anyway. But the other thing I think with slasher that's incredible is I love detective stories. I grew up on detective story. Like, I've always read detective stories. So there's always that element, the like, who done it? Who is it behind the mask? The Scooby-Doo thing, you know? Like, is it Old Man Withers from the arcade that's behind the werewolf mask, or what is it? There's that aspect to it. Then you've got the special effects, because I love special effects. So when they do like some crazy kill or some imaginative thing, or they nail someone to a board with a javelin or something like that, like, I'm always impressed by that. I like it's like a good magic trick, you know what I mean? If you don't see how they did it, it's always fun.
Yeah, I hear that, and yet, like, intellectually, I hear what you're saying. I'm like, yeah, but I want to get through. Like, I just want to get through that. I like the suspense leading up to the kill, but then just it's like, all right, the kill happened. Let's just move on, to the next.
You want just the next one,
or just let's enjoy the suspense between this kill and the next kill too.
Right.
Sort, right. Yeah. If you look at like Halloween, I mean, there's not even that much blood in Halloween, and
oh no, exactly. And in fact, Halloween, yeah, you're completely right. Halloween plays on the scares more than it plays on anything else. I was talking more once you get into the lower end, like once you pass the sort of Black Christmas, Halloween, but once you get past those ones that have the suspense, and you're down into the sort of night schools and Fatal Games, where it was all about gymnastics and stuff, and when you get to like Aerobicide and these sort of films, that's when
you got to give them credit for like Death by Refrigerator or
right, yeah,
any number of ridiculous things. So I hear you.
Yeah, and and even as you get through like the Friday the 13th sequels, like once you get to the Weed Whacker and things like that, I'm kind of enjoying that just for the sheer bravado of it, I think.
Yeah, and comedy.
And comedy, yeah, of course. Oh yes, the other big news that I wanted to mention, sir, before we go on to review the film, because we have got big news, and that is one of the films that brought you and I together originally, the wonderful Alien Factor, has been given a spanking Blu-ray release.
Wow.
Can you believe that, sir? From the VHS days of indie Baltimore movies, we now have it on the latest of technologies. Isn't that incredible?
That's really awesome. That is really nice. What kind of bonuses are they including? Do you know?
Oh, they've got all sorts. I know, obviously, our good friend of the show, George Stover, is sort of the keeper of the Dohler Grail when it comes to behind-the-scenes stuff. And, in fact, when you become his friend, George sends you a little jiffy bag full of DVD-Rs that have this treasure trove of behind the scenes of every Dohler movie and John Waters movie and stuff like that. I mean, I am sitting on some priceless Baltimore-related movie treasures. However, he has delved into his sack of those, and there are some convention appearances. There's a commentary where he personally got together people like Dick Dizell, who are in the movie, and who's also Count Gordeval, the horror host. And he also got, for the first time ever on any of Don Dohler's stuff, even the documentary, he's not in, Tom Griffith, who plays the wonderful sheriff in that and Night Beast. He is on the commentary. And there's a bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff and some photographs and more George introducing stuff. And George even signed the first 1,000 Blu-ray copies that are ordered. It has a George Stover signature on the back. So it's everything the fans could want and more, really.
Yeah, good for them. Imagine that. A movie made, essentially in your backyard in 1978 or whatever year it was.
Yeah, I think so. Somewhere around there, yeah. It was just after Star Wars, the first Star Wars release, so 78, 79.
And it's still doing its thing, still getting out there. That's it's inspiring.
It's inspiring, sir, indeed. And one day we will have the vaulted Freaky Farley on Blu-ray. That will one day become. They'll have it in the Smithsonian. It'll be there behind a glass case next to, I like to think, the Alien Factor. I like to think that those two movies, or Fiend or something, would go very well together. Just sit them side by side in a gold case encrusted with jewels, much as the British have the royal family's crowns and things, which are utterly useless. You can't do anything with crowns. They're too heavy to wear on a regular basis.
What did they ever do? All they did was get born.
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
I made a movie.
You made several movies, and I think they should be on display in the Smithsonian for all to see. That is our dream and fervent prayer. But for the moment, I just wanted to celebrate the Alien Factor on Blu-ray. Get your thoughts on it, sir, and see what you think. What do you think?
I think that's wonderful. It's like I said, I'm inspired, and it's a different time, because it's amazing that got on, I believe, TBS. I'm pretty sure, or right? Am I right? Superstation TBS.
I don't know which TV station it played on originally, but you're right. It made its bones on TV. That's where it became big.
It got like national TV exposure. Granted, it was probably like at midnight or later, but I mean, for a movie that unprofessional, and I say that with love.
Yes.
With a movie that unprofessional, to get that kind of that many eyes on it in a time when there weren't even that many TV stations.
Yeah, and Dohler had a career for 30 years. Making movies off the back of it.
Yeah, and nowadays to get seen by a lot of people, like even on Netflix, there's a certain quality that you can't go below, and again, this sounds insulting, but I'm below that quality, so it's okay. Both in acting and in technical aspects that you could get away with in the 70s, 80s. Maybe the cutoff is probably early 90s, but then at some point, just like the standards were raised high enough that they kind of, it's a shame, because they hold back all the stuff made by local legends like these Baltimore people.
I agree, and I think that some of the stuff that is made on high-def digital camcorders made and then sort of pushed out by distribution companies onto things like Netflix, and a lot of these sort of mockbusters where they're trying to do rip-offs of the big movies, but and the endless parade of zombie movies. I mean, we have had just a million in the last few years, and they're all awful. There's not one story, character, performer, or anything out of any of them that is of any interest. I would take all of Dohler's work and all of yours and Charlie's work over any of those any day of the week. Because I think what you deal with is passion, creativity, humor, heart, and talent in a way that they don't. And I'm not blowing smoke. I genuinely believe that.
Well, technology keeps getting better, and that's a good thing because it's going to even the level the playing field even more. So
I agree.
Like I said, we're X amount of years away where it's conceivable that you could do a talk show, out of your basement that people could view in high def, on their TVs, probably live.
In fact, you could film it on your phone right now. There's high def video there's 1080, whatever they call it, 1080p on your phone right now that you could record a thing on and just put it online.
And that's fantastic. So
it's beautiful.
And Dohler, all the work that Dohler had to do that people don't have to do now. I mean, to make that movie a movie on your own on film and the sound and everything else. Oh my God, so much more work. We are lucky right now.
We are lucky, sir. I can't help but think that, however, with ease comes a multitude that we have to wade through of bad stuff in order to find the sliver of gold that is something like Slingshot Cops, which is coming out this year, I know.
I'm very excited for that. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm not sure how many people are bothering. Are a lot of people bothering to make junk? I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, if sort of the lower echelons of Netflix and Hulu and various other streaming sites are to be believed, yes, people are going out of their way to make utter pish because I think somewhere along the line someone's giving them distribution money. Like someone somewhere is saying, we need more zombie films, or we need more shark films, or we need whatever. And people are going out of their way to do that, I think, just to kind of fill that void. But that is what it is. The other exciting news is that George Stover from The Alien Factor has his very own documentary out called No Stopping the Stover, which I love that title. No Stopping the Stover. And that's out right now. Can be found over at oldies.com. It's not on Amazon. It's being released by an independent releasing company called oldies.com. They also released the great double disc of Alien and Fiend for the Alien Factor and Fiend DVDs. They're also releasing No Stopping the Stover, so people should go over to oldies.com, pick that up. But I am definitely, it got me thinking again, so I am definitely going to make that documentary about you. It's got to happen, and then we're going to release it, and it's going to be huge.
Okay, I'm in.
Yes. So that's definitely going to happen. I mean, I think my plan always was, as you did the tour with Slingshot Cops, showing it around the place, I was going to try and show up to as many in sort of the New England area as I could and kind of film you and all your pals there and then do some sit-down stuff as well. So kind of start with the release of Slingshot Cops and then go from there, you know what I mean?
Excellent. Yeah, well, there's a heck of a lot of very successful documentaries about creative people. And I think my story is just as interesting as theirs, if not more so.
Well, then when they build the statue to you, which I think should be the end of the documentary, like at the end of the documentary, all the way through the documentary, you should say there should be a statue of me. And at the end of the documentary, we should somehow get a statue of you. I think that's how we should do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, you have access to all my rantings on my podcast. You can grab a lot of good sound bites from those things.
Yeah, but I don't want to do too much work.
I hear you. Yeah, I mean, it's.
No, of course I'll be going back through this. I listened to your episode with Elizabeth today. It was excellent, so it was excellent. I liked it a lot.
Nice. Thank you. I listened twice.
Yeah, as well you should. I also listened to several old Don Dohler-related episodes of my podcast, and it made me yearn for the glory days of the After Movie Diner. So a lot more of those coming in the future as well. In fact, I believe Mr. Stover might even be coming back on the show. So that excites me no end.
Yeah, very cool.
Okay, so let's delve into the movie that you picked this week, and then we'll answer people's questions at the end. That way they have to sit through the whole thing to hear their names being read out. Do you like my tactic? I feel like I stole that from you or something.
You got to suffer. You got to suffer through our rants if you want to hear your name.
Right. And we're sort of, you picked, I was kind of surprised by that. Well, not surprised, but like it was an interesting pick from you, I felt, of Scorsese's Cape Fear. And why don't you tell us, first of all, like, where did that pick come from? Because you just tweeted it right back to me. You were like, how about Scorsese's Cape Fear? Where did that come from, sir?
Well, it dates back to Saturday night when I was on the couch with my lovely wife, and we were looking for a movie to watch, and I saw Cape Fear on Netflix. And I said, ooh, I like Cape Fear. Elizabeth, you want to watch it? And she said, sure. And we watched it, and I was delighted by it once again. And it was fresh in my mind, and so out of the blue, I get a message from you saying you want to be on the diner, and I was like, yeah, I want to talk about Cape Fear because I've been doing it anyway. I went to a cookout on Sunday for Father's Day. I'm just walking around looking for anyone to talk Cape Fear with me, and no one was interested.
Well, that's because, as you've said many times on your show, cookouts are stupid. Don't socialize with people because you can't talk about the things that you love with them because they only care about themselves.
Yeah, or it's not even just themselves. They just want to talk about bland, generalities. And I'm like, no, who cares how our lives are going? Let's talk about a movie that was released 25 years ago.
Yeah, it's 25 years ago this year as well. Not only that, but you have something of a coup here on the After Movie Diner as you're getting me to talk about a remake.
I know. It didn't even dawn on me until you brought it up because this movie it really stands alone as a true statement and a true individual work that I know it's a remake. Of course, I've seen the original, but it is its own thing. And we can get into the remake thing, but I'm proud. I'm proud to have broken you down and gotten you to talk like this.
Yes, indeed. That's exactly what you've done. You have broken me down. No, actually, I was interested by it because so it's 29 years after the original. The original comes out in 1962, and it's about 29 years. And I think, let me just see. One of the ones that people quote to me all the time, which is The Thing. Every time I talk about remakes are terrible. People go, what about The Thing? Mm-hmm. And The Thing is 31 years. So it's roughly around 30 years. And it's interesting because we're seeing a lot of the horror movie remakes that I rail against and rant against are sort of redoing movies that were released at the end of the 70s, at the beginning of the millennium, which is about 30 years. So it's interesting to see sort of every 30 years, I think, there is this idea of like, we can go back to that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a heck of a lot of a difference. Like the difference in style of popular filmmaking between 1960 and 1990, the way things have changed in that gap versus 1990 to now is drastic. Like, I think this 1991 Cape Fear could have been released, this year and fit right in, with what's playing. It wouldn't seem dated. Whereas, the 1962 Cape Fear is very dated compared to 1992. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, in film style, not necessarily in subject matter. Like, I'm always amazed when I go back to older films from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, sort of almost how more mature they are. A lot of people talk about sort of the infantilization of America during the 80s because it was all, the horror was silly and the big budget movies were silly and everything kind of got a bit silly and goofy and la-di-da kind of thing. And I disagree. I think the 80s are every bit of as creative as any other decade, if not more so. But I'm always impressed when I go back to older movies to think, oh yeah, they're dealing with very adult topics, or they're dealing with sort of very difficult topics, because I think we tend to look back at the 40s, 50s, and 60s and go, well, that was before you were able to say all the stuff we can say now, or that was before we had any problems like difficult psychology or women's issues or anything like that. Like, now we have all these important topics, and back then they didn't. And it's
nothing
crap.
is new. You're right. Nothing's new.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things, I always quote that idea that Monty Python had, which was they would do these historical movies, whether it's the Arthur legend in Holy Grail or Jesus Times in Life of Brian, but they would put all these sort of modern bickering in there, or modern arguments, or modern whatever. And actually it didn't feel unauthentic, because human beings have been having the same arguments since we crawled out of the ocean. You know what I mean? Like the same stuff goes round and round. So I think it's just our modern minds, where whenever the present is, the present tends to look at the past as lesser than, for some reason.
Yeah, which is so silly, because in the grand scheme, it's like a blink of the eye. Different 100 years even,
Yeah. Well, everyone tries to have superiority, isn't it? That's really what it is. They want that superiority. Either that, or we, of course, look back with rose-tinted spectacles. But then rose-tinted spectacles tends to be like, life was simpler. Like, we want life in the past to be simpler. And yet, if you look at the original Cape Fear and you look at the Cape Fear from 1991, life's no more simpler, you know what I mean, in either film or in either time period. Life is as chaotic in the 60s, if not more so, as it is now,
Yeah, but Scorsese, he was in the middle of a good stretch right there in '92. I mean, that's Goodfellas, then Cape Fear, then Age of Innocence, then Casino. I'm pretty sure is the stretch that he was on, and
yes.
That's pretty darn impressive.
It's a great stretch that he's on.
And I feel like Cape Fear is overlooked. You don't obviously people talk about Goodfellas a lot and Casino, whereas Cape Fear, it's I like it better. And who talks about it besides us?
Nobody, and that's why we're that's why we're better. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. That's why we're better and superior to everyone else. And I'll say this as well. Goodfellas, I love it. Don't get me wrong. It's a bit long. And
I like Casino better than Goodfellas.
So do I. I love Casino. I think Casino is a better film than Goodfellas. I think it's got more to say, and it's more fun to see them collapse under their own BS than it is to watch them kind of be celebrated for being thugs.
Yeah, the last act of Goodfellas kind of loses me, whereas Casino holds me from start to finish.
I'm with it all the way, especially with James Woods with his sleazy mustache and his jumpsuit. I'm all for that. That's my favorite character in there.
One other thing for Scorsese's great run, he also did, there was a movie called New York Stories, which I think was '89, where Coppola, and Woody Allen each did a 30-minute short that was collected in one movie. Have you ever seen it?
Yes, I own it. And in fact, it's available very cheaply on Blu-ray from Mill Creek.
Yeah, and the other two shorts I'm not a big fan of, but Life Lessons by Scorsese, it's a tour de force. It is really good, and a lot of the kind of camera work that he does in Cape Fear, and it is just whew.
Yeah, and I feel like of all the DiCaprio ones that he's been doing recently, everyone went crazy over Wolf of Wall Street, but I felt like I didn't like Wolf of Wall Street for many reasons. First of all, it's too long, but also I didn't feel like the main character was condemned enough.
It wasn't
in any way.
Yeah.
And in fact, they can say that they were condemning him by showing his excesses, but then the real guy that the movie is based on appears in the movie, and not only paid for that, but also was paid for the script and paid for the story and whatever. So he's making vast tons of cash off this horrendous story about screwing everyone over and treating everyone like crap. Whereas Shutter Island, which I feel is like the Cape Fear of Scorsese's modern run, is by far my favorite. I think, to me, it's Shutter Island and then The Aviator. They're my two favorite of the DiCaprio run.
Yeah, I like The Aviator best of that run, but you're totally right. Shutter Island is his Cape Fear of this time.
Yeah, meaning he goes back to the Hitchcock. There's a bit of Hammer horror in there. There's, he's throwing in some Italian horror references. Like it's him doing a fun genre film. And as serious as the topics are in Cape Fear, and as despicable as some of the actions are in Cape Fear, you still get the feeling that Scorsese's having immense fun making it.
Like delicious fun. You know, it's kind of like, never. It's like suspenseful and thriller, but it's never like horror because of that. Or, well, I have a theory that all the best art is simultaneously every emotion at once. Kind of, it's funny and it's thrilling and it's sad and whatnot. Woody Allen's Match Point is a good example of that, where it's like you're watching it and it's tense, but it's also just like a little funny, and the way people are behaving is they're not going for realism. It's kind of operatic, over the top, heightened. I mean, and with Cape Fear, even just the red color of the sky, of the sunsets in some of those shots, it's like that there's no sky has ever been that red, but it works for this movie. Yeah,
he's doing. Because, I mean, there's always heightened moments in Scorsese. He's king of the montage, you know what I mean? The musical montage with the rock song and then a lot of sort of stuff going on, and that happens in Casino and Goodfellas and Wolf of Wall Street and Taxi Driver to some extent, although it's a sort of reoccurring dreamlike state that he's commenting on in Taxi Driver. But there's lots of those his movies where he's famous for having a Rolling Stone. The Departed has it, the Rolling Stones track in that.
Even Mean Streets, I think.
Mean Streets, yeah, of course. So he's kind of famous for these things, which are very filmic and bold. However, something like Goodfellas or something like Taxi Driver or something like Mean Streets is seemingly grounded in a reality. He's not playing with reality in the same way as he is with Cape Fear. And what I mean by that is, like, Cape Fear is he's saying, I am making a movie. Look how much of a movie this is.
Yes.
Look at this effect shot that I have where we've split the sky so that I can have these brooding red scary horror clouds coming over this serene Georgian house. Or here I'm going to do a negative effect, or here I'm going to whip the camera around 360. Like, there's some shots in here which are, and look, obviously Scorsese was making movies long before this, and I'm just saying it's comparable to Sam Raimi's kinetic camera work with the zoom into an item and then they lock the door, or the hand flapping down the blinds on the doors, or the way that the camera spins 360 during the boat sequence at the end.
It's a thrill ride. It's a thrill ride. It's everything that a summer blockbuster should be, you know?
Yes.
It's like Scorsese was like, oh, you want me to make a mainstream thrilling suspense movie? Okay, here you go. You know, and he just went for it, and wow, it is start to finish. The only thing I don't like is the bookend narration by Juliette Lewis. I mean, why do we need this like poetic?
Yeah, I don't really get that either. It sort of doesn't
start the movie and finish the movie. You know, it's over, and then she's like, "We never talked about it from that moment on."
Yeah.
And we don't. Shut up! It's over.
Yeah, it's not really relevant. And I agree with you. And I think that the other incredible thing about it is it's almost like Scorsese and De Niro, certainly at the point that this was made, had been vaulted high into the upper echelons of like movie lore or movie legend. In other words, De Niro was this incredible method actor and Scorsese was this incredibly important film director. And it's almost like Scorsese and De Niro looked at each other over dinner and went, let's make a movie in which we both just go bananas.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's so over the top when he's in the when he's in the movie theater smoking his cigar and laughing. I mean, it can't be at all taken realistically. It's just like this is just pure popcorn fun at the movies, and I like that. I like it a lot because you it's like a thrill ride. There's moments where you're jolted, but the next minute you're kind of like giggling.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting because a lot of these guys, De Palma or Scorsese or Spielberg or whatever, they're all sort of considered these grand masters of filmmaking. The one thing rarely that anyone ever points out is that they're genre filmmakers, meaning like a gangster movie, that's like a genre. Horror is a genre, action is a genre, whatever it is. So while they have both made serious films, Age of Innocence is not a genre film, Schindler's List is not a genre film, but while they've done that, they have both made these, or all these filmmakers have made these films that, this one directly harkens back, obviously, to the late 50s, early 60s, but that period of time where if you went to the cinema, you were seeing a Western, a detective film, a gangster film, and then the odd drama would come out. And I suppose Cape Fear has drama elements in it, but it's a horror film, and the way that Scorsese's reimagined it is as a Technicolor, booming soundtrack, full-blown, scary, psychotic performance from De Niro. De Niro is Freddy Krueger, you know what I mean, in this movie. And it's a horror film. It's a Hitchcock. It's an Argento. It's those
also,
kind of
we should say, a noir. Obviously, it's definitely a noir. And I want to note Body Heat from earlier from about 10 years prior to Cape Fear.
Yes.
Ever seen Body Heat?
I have done. Yes, Kathleen Turner and William Hurt.
Yeah, and that's another one. That's another one where they did a good job of updating it for the 80s, but. Body Heat is not a remake, but it could be, because it's so rooted in the elements of a noir film, but they do it right. And both of those movies also have the everyone's sweaty,
Yeah,
Body
definitely.
Heat takes place in Florida, and Cape Fear's in the summer in North Carolina, and it's just like everyone's kind of uncomfortable and sweaty. In the same way that Rear Window, I always like to watch Rear Window in August, on a hot
of course.
night. Put on Rear Window and just kind of feel a little uncomfortable, and your windows are open and you're wondering what's going on in the neighbor's house.
And I think that weirdly enough, the one that screams as influence on both those movies, both Body Heat and the updated Cape Fear, is I think a lesser mentioned Hitchcock, because it's not The Birds and it's not Rear Window and it's not Psycho, and that's Strangers on a Train, which again has that. It's in the South. Everyone's sweaty. There's that big ending at the fairground where Hitchcock is doing crazy things with the merry-go-round and the tunnel of love and all these things. You've got the central character, I'm going to forget his name now. Bruno, that's it. Who is the over-the-top psychotic, loves his mom and has a vengeance kind of thing.
Yeah, very much like the De Niro character. Maybe obviously a little more buttoned up than De Niro, because no one's more over the top than De Niro is in this movie.
But it's and then of course in Body Heat you've got the whole idea of you do my murder and I'll do yours kind of thing, right? In Body Heat, isn't that one of the things she's trying to convince him to do?
I don't remember the plot. I just remember knowing that it was fantastic. I've seen it a couple times, but it's been a few years.
Yeah, I think she's trying to convince him to do away with her husband or something like that. I think that's part of Body Heat, which is also kind of the through line of Strangers on a Train. And again, Strangers on a Train is another example, as is Psycho, as is Rear Window, where I watch those old movies and I go, wow, they're having exactly the same approach to a Psycho on film, to Oedipal complexes, to male and female relationships, to what you name it, fear, whatever it is, that we would have today. You know what I mean? And you really can trace whether it's Anthony Perkins in Psycho or whoever plays Bruno in Stranger on the Train, I can't remember off the top of my head right now, right through to someone like Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, or Max Cady in the update Cape Fear, or whatever it is. You can really sort of see it's a rogues gallery of all those characters, and to say that it's a modern invention, it is naive,
Indeed. Body Heat, like I said, is not a remake as far as I know. It's an original, but I mean, it's basically just plucking all your favorite elements of those movies into an original script. And then Cape Fear is a remake, and but they could have just as easily said, let's make a movie about a criminal taking revenge on his lawyer,
Yeah, and in fact,
it's not a remake. So I don't know. Like, I guess for the sake of branding, you call it Cape Fear, and you get a lot more press because people remember the first Cape Fear. There's that, and then I guess in terms of honesty, if you're going to make a movie like that, you're either just stealing elements without giving credit, or you're giving credit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. And let's have the remake thing very quickly, just so that people because people are like, well, wait a minute, John's railed against remakes, and if anyone posts now, because they're doing a remake of It, and they're doing a remake of a whole bunch of stuff, Death Wish, they're doing a remake of Death Wish and various other things, and every time anyone posts anything about it, I just post no, ! Or fuck off or something. I'm just rude about it at this point.
It's my fault. John was very nice to do this episode, but I apologize. I should have thought twice.
No, but let me explain. So I think when it comes to remakes and retellings, because look, every time someone does a Sherlock Holmes story, whether it's Peter Cushing, that I dearly love, or whether it's Robert Downey Jr., which I also enjoyed, because they're two different takes on the same thing, they're remakes. When anyone makes a Shakespeare story, they're remakes. When anyone makes, they say there's only 3 or 4 stories in the world. There have been plenty of Strangers on a Train type stories where the femme fatale asks the guy, dupes the guy into doing something he wouldn't normally do. You know what I mean? That's a story. That's been played out multiple times.
Yeah.
And it comes down to one very simple thing for me when it comes to remakes, and that's intention. And I think that the intention of someone like John Carpenter, who is already an established director with his own original work, or the David Cronenberg doing The Fly, or Scorsese doing the Cape Fear remake, I think it comes down to intention. What do I feel watching the film is the intention of the filmmaker and or the people in it. And while, of course, there was a studio system, and of course money was involved, and of course show has always been show business, I understand all those arguments. I feel like the modern rash of horror movie remakes, and I keep calling them modern, but it's been the last 15 years almost that they've been pumping out this crap since the Dawn of the Dead remake. But the Dawn of the Dead remake's a great example, similarly to the Evil Dead remake or any of them. And I feel like with those movies, the intention there is, well, we've got to have a name that everyone recognizes, and we've got to have zombies in a shopping mall, because that's what was in the original one. But that's as far as we care about anything. As long as we can slap the tag on it and put a poster up and call it the same name and have zombies in a shopping mall, we don't really have to care about anything. Why do the zombies run? It doesn't matter. Why is it just going to be this sort of big, thoughtless action movie with no real sort of mind behind it or storyline behind it or characters behind it or anything like that? It doesn't matter. It's called Dawn of the Dead. There are zombies. It's a shopping mall. Away we go. Whereas I feel like the intention of John Carpenter's The Thing is he's a big fan of Howard Hawks, he's a big fan of the original, but he's reread the short story that it's based on, and he's gone, okay, I can develop a movie that is about something more than just a generic alien attacking some people in an isolated area, and I can start talking about human paranoia, and I can start all these interesting characters, and we can talk about the destruction that comes from within rather than necessarily an alien or a supernatural presence. And I feel like the same way Cronenberg's doing with The Fly. And I think what Scorsese has done with Cape Fear, when you watch Cape Fear, all the topics it touches on from vigilantism to the way we perceive the law, to the way women are put on trial during rape cases, to the psychotic or the crazy, or even the criminal justice system, or even the prison system, or guns versus no guns, violence versus no violence, all those things that it's covering. It's very, for all its theater and for all its opera and for all its crazy horror and everything's dialed up to 11, it is touching on and updating and being serious about these themes that are still very, very important today. I mean, you only have to look at the Bill Cosby case or whatever it is, and the way that the women are still put on trial and so on and so forth in rape cases, or the statistics that 60% of rapes are never even reported because they don't feel like it would ever come to any satisfying conclusion. So there's all sorts of things in it that it's examining that were worth updating, were worth talking about, and were worth dramatizing in this way that you can get out of it. And so I think that there's an intent there that isn't just, well, everyone remembers Cape Fear, slap the name on it, make it De Niro and Scorsese, and it'll sell a bundle. I don't think Scorsese's ever made a movie with that in mind. You know what I mean? Sure. I mean, obviously he wants to be successful. But if you look at, I think he's more like Woody Allen. I think he tells the story he wants to tell. And if occasionally he has a Wolf of Wall Street or a Midnight in Paris or whatever it is that happens to be a massive hit, then great. That just means he can carry on making more movies. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So I think when it comes to remakes, the reason why I rail against the modern ones is when I look at the Halloween remake, Evil Dead remake, you name it, I just see a boardroom of guys counting money. That's all I see. I don't see any creativity behind it at all. I don't feel that way with Cape Fear. I don't feel that way about The Thing. I don't feel that way about The Fly. I don't feel that way about the original Maltese Falcon. I mean, not the original Maltese Falcon, but the one everyone knows, even though it's a remake. Yeah, it's a remake. And I don't feel that way about Sherlock Holmes stories and so on and so forth, as long as they're coming at the source material with an interesting intention.
Right. And what are your thoughts on Cape Fear? I mean, I put it up there with one of Scorsese's best movies, and just a pure cinematic delight. What are your thoughts?
I think it's absolutely a fascinating movie. And I think it's a fascinating movie because you can watch it like we're talking about, where it's just a roller coaster, thriller, psycho thriller, horror, whatever you want to call it, noir film with insane visuals and a ratcheted up crazy performance in the center of it from everyone, really. I mean, everyone. There isn't really a nice character in this movie. Everyone has sins in this movie.
Let's have a moment for Joe Don Baker, by the way.
Joe Don Baker, 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 Joe Don Baker.
He was so good and hilarious too. Every time he's on screen, I'm just cracking up, and he's coming up with these new plans and they're all going wrong.
Right. And I think also Scorsese's aware of every single bit of comedy, drama, horror, love, whatever it is. I think he's aware of every single emotion. And I think like opera, like Hitchcock, like theater, whatever it is, he is really dripping every single drop of performance, emotion, excitement, and everything that he can out of the subject matter. I think it's a very good script. I don't think there's a bad line or a bad idea in the script. I think it's a very, very good script. Yeah. I think it's both incredibly purposefully shot, but also joyously off the chain in some moments. I think that De Niro's performance is both utterly spine-chillingly horrific and gloriously pantomimic, like completely over the top and ridiculous in some bits, where his accent is all over the place, and his strutting about is ridiculous, and his preaching is ridiculous, and yet you are gripped and scared by it from the moment he turns up on screen. Can
I also note?
Yeah, go ahead.
Juliette Lewis, perhaps her best performance ever. She just encapsulates that teenage girl in every way.
Yes.
She really,
another really difficult thing that's in the movie, the idea of burgeoning sexuality. So obviously he's a predator. Obviously he is a child molester, or at least on that borderline of rapist and child molester. And yet she is obviously also having those first awakenings, and there is that wonderful sort of, well, not wonderful, but sort of there is that examination of that blurred line, which is kind of horrific but also human. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you totally believe that she would have a little bit of a thing for him. Like, I buy it 100% the way that they present it.
Yeah, she's tremendous in it, and I think. I think she has a very hard role to play. I think Jessica Lange has an incredibly difficult role to play because she's the most innocent. She's not done anything wrong. She's not cheated on Nick Nolte. She's not been lured by Max Cady. She is doing her work at home. I presume she's a designer or an artist of some kind. Loving her dog and looking after her daughter. And yet, because throughout the movie she is either on Nick Nolte's case, or they're arguing or they're bickering or whatever, or she's drinking or she's smoking or whatever it is, there's this implication that she's sort of a bit of a bane to be around, you know what I mean? Yet we don't see those years and years and years of neglect and abuse that Nick Nolte has put on her that led her to become that person. So although they all seem like shrill, horrible, bitching people, she's got every reason to be at that point. But it's
I sympathize with her for sure.
Of course, but it's a very hard role to play because she's got to play bitchy, certainly in certain scenes, where you want to feel sorry for Nick Nolte because he's being hunted down and he's being attacked and his family's in peril. But you also know what a scumbag Nick Nolte is. So.
Yeah, I know. He's playing racquetball with that girl, and you're like, oh, Nick, what are you doing? What are you doing, Nick? Not good at all. But I really was happy to watch it last Saturday night. And the last thing I want to say is. It's over the top, gleeful fun, throughout. Obviously, it hits, like you say, lots of serious topics that get you thinking. And all the while, it can still be fun, which is amazing. But the moment when you're like, okay, like, there are no rules is when the camera pans down and we see that De Niro has been attached to the bottom of their car.
Right.
It's like a couple 100-mile drive, like a 100-mile drive. He's just hovering below their car, and it's like, okay, anything can now happen. Yeah. And I'm all right with it.
Oh, completely. I'm absolutely fine with it. I'm even fine with the completely ludicrous ending where, like our slasher villain, we were talking about slashers earlier, like a slasher villain, you just can't kill this guy. He keeps coming back, and you could see the makeup artist there going like, well, hang on a second, I've already burnt him with water. How am I meant to make it look like he's now been burnt with fire? Plus, wait a minute, you're going to film this on a boat, so he's constantly being covered with water. Like, the makeup artist must have been pulling his hair out, going, how the hell do I do this?
I've always wanted to make a movie. Like, the thing about all these movies is if the main characters are smart, they would have dealt with the menace, and the movie would be over after 20 minutes, And so I want to make a movie where, at some point in the movie, the character has to deal with a slasher situation, but gets out of it because the main character is smart, and then the movie continues, and it's, that's just a section of a full movie.
Yeah, and in fact, I've been talking with Jay Mayo. Jay Mayo and I might go into production on a short, either on a short or a feature of our own, filmed at his house in Massachusetts. And one of the ideas I had was a slasher that then kind of becomes an action film because the main character is not an idiot and decides to be like, well, okay, if there's someone out there hunting me, I'm going to go after them because that's what I would do. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
do
I
it.
kind of got this idea.
Make it a feature.
I kind of had that similar thought. And, I mean, it's been done in horror movies. It's not an original thing, but I've got certain ideas that I want to throw in it. And it's going to be also with my sense of humor and Jay and whatever. I'm going to write a draft and then send it to Jay, and he's going to do a sort of Mayoism all over it, and then he'll send it back. But yeah, no, so... what was I saying? Oh yeah, so like a slasher villain, he keeps coming back at the end. It does get ridiculous. But there is. It's very interesting how Scorsese is able to throw everything in this movie, even the kitchen sink, and yet there still be moments in it where you are thinking and questioning. And one of the things you were saying about like a lead character being smart, I think one of the most interesting things about the original Cape Fear and this one is the idea of the fact that up until a point, Max Cady is aware of the law, is aware of what he can do in the bounds of the law, and therefore sort of torments them without ever being attackable or arrestable or anything like that.
And it makes you feel pretty like as a viewer, you feel that frustration even, like
right.
You feel how Nolte must feel, like a lot of pressure, like you're kind of tense while watching it, and that's why the funny moments are that much funnier probably.
Yeah, and when they start coming up with all these harebrained schemes of what to do about him, on one hand, you're like, well, that's just stupid. Don't do that. You're just going to enrage him further. But on the other hand, you're kind of like, well, they've run out of recourse.
Hands are tied. Yeah, exactly.
Like, what are they going to do? What do you think, dude, about the original stars showing up, Mitchum and Peck showing up in this movie as they do? I love it. I personally love it.
I love it, too. It's a perfect touch. And, I mean, they're kind of doing the opposite, right? The guy who's the good guy kind of is the bad guy in this one, and am I right?
Well, no, because Peck in the original is Nick Nolte's character. So Peck in the original is the attorney, and in this, he's an attorney.
Yeah, but I'm an attorney for De Niro, and
for Cady, right? But he's kind of doing his Atticus Finch thing, right? He's kind of doing To Kill a Mockingbird a little bit with his
over the top,
his Southern lawyer with his little pocket watch and his his waistcoat. It's all very sweet, isn't it? And quoting from the Bible and all that kind of stuff. It's wonderful. And Mitchum is the kind of shady chief of police who suggests to Nolte, why don't you take the law into your own hands? To which Nolte's like, what did you just say? Like, are you crazy?
Yeah, and then he's like, I never said that. It's great.
Yeah, so I like how, like, I think... I mean, I do love the movie. I can't really sort of place it. Like, Taxi Driver will always be my favorite Scorsese movie because it has such a formative place in my heart. Like, I saw that right at the time you're meant to see that, and it has sort of stuck with me ever since. And there's tons of Scorsese movies I love. Casino is another one that I remember. In fact, I saw Casino kind of when it came out. And I've sort of loved it since then. Cape Fear is one I came to later. And I came to Cape Fear and the original Cape Fear at exactly the same time because they were released in a DVD box set in the UK with both movies, which is a great way to do it. It's a great acknowledgement of the original while also releasing your update, as is having the stars in the remake. And it gives you it gives you a way to contrast both and so on. And so I do love it. I do love the movie. I don't know kind of where to place it in Scorsese's output.
That's the thing, because he's not aiming for all-time statement on humanity or where Taxi Driver deals with heavier issues. Goodfellas and Casino both feel like heavier issues are being dealt with, and so it's harder to give it because it doesn't have that heft. Where it's much more pure entertainment, you know. And,
yeah, definitely. But there's what was I gonna say about it? I was constantly intrigued as well. I don't know how many how much of this you've seen, but there are sequences in this movie that are filmed like a rom-com from sort of the early 60s, like a sort of Doris Day, Rock Hudson type thing. There's a sequence where Nick Nolte's face they're in the kitchen of the home towards the beginning, and Nick Nolte's face is close up and Jessica Lange is in the background, and they're sort of laughing, having a...
Are they both in focus? Or there's one where they're in the bathroom and there's like a weird effect where they're not lined up next to each other, but they're both in focus. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know exactly what you're talking about, and I think that there's an effort, especially with the family scenes, whether it's the arguments or whether it's the happy moments, to almost make them timeless. Like, they could have been filmed last week, but they also could have been filmed in the 50s. The way that Nolte is dressed, the way that there's no depth. Like, he flattens out the image.
Yeah.
Even when there is a depth of field, even when Nolte is very up front and Jessica Lange's right in the back, they're both in focus and they're both brought up to the front of the screen. It's a very interesting technique, and it's what they used to do in things like Pillow Talk or whatever, like those old 50s knockabout things. But even in films like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, the Poitier movie and stuff like any of those movies that were made that were kind of part serious, part comedic from sort of the 50s and 60s. This movie looks like that as well. Like, it's got so many influences in it, and they're all bouncing off each other all the time.
It's cinematic tour de force. That's what it is. It's just Scorsese flexing his muscles and saying, you know, I don't need to make a big statement. I don't need to be making The Last Temptation of Christ. I'm just going to make a popcorn thriller and make it just so many layers.
Yeah, but you see, The Last Temptation of Christ is equally hilarious because you have Harvey Keitel and William Dafoe in, like, the Holy Land. You know what I mean? You have these guys walking around being all New Yorky in, like, Judea. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I only tried that movie once, and I was just like, oh, I can't watch this. This is so dull. Oh.
Right. But no, yeah, there was a point I was going to make about this movie. I find it, I just find it a bit of an incredible film. Like, it's kind of unlike anything else in a weird way, because there's a totally serious way to watch it, but it's also completely bonkers. And
well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but The Shining is the same way. Shining is the scariest movie I've ever seen, and it's also one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And
yes.
And Kubrick knew, you know, and it's got that stuff where you're super tense, and then, like, the word Monday comes up on the screen, and you like jump because it says Monday, and then you giggle because it's silly and funny.
One of the things people always forget about these guys, whether it's Kubrick, Scorsese, or whatever, whenever they're going on and on about them, and I think I've probably gone on, I sound too fucking pretentious as well, but the thing they forget about these guys is they have a sense of humor too. You know what I mean? Like, we all have a sense of humor.
Barry Lyndon, it took me a while to figure out. I watched Barry Lyndon a couple times. I was like, this just seems so serious and boring. And then you watch it like the fifth time, and you're like, wait a second. Every second of Barry Lyndon, and it's 3 hours long. Every second is hilarious. Oh my God, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I was one of the few people who liked Eyes Wide Shut, because I think in Eyes Wide Shut he's poking fun at human sexuality and human relationships, and I don't think that's meant to be a serious examination. I think that's meant to be, you know, funny and truthful.
Yeah, tons of humor there, but it is simultaneously serious and, you know, and a little scary, and that's why I brought up Match Point, because it's the same thing. I'm tense, but I'm also kind of marveling at the
husbands and wives,
hyper realism too, you know. But
husbands and wives, with Juliette Lewis in it. There is some stuff in Husbands and Wives that is utterly horrifying if you've ever been in a relationship that's even at all fractious. And there's bits in it that are utterly hysterical. The sequence where Sidney Pollack is dragging his aerobic instructor out of a party and they're having a horrible fight, I'm kind of laughing at that as much
but
as
you're a little tense too. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But there's also what's that great? Is it in Crimes and Misdemeanors when someone ties up his sister and goes to the bathroom on her, and it's really horrific. But then Woody Allen comes home and sits on the bed and says, "A strange man went to the bathroom on my sister," and his wife rolls over and says, "Turn the light out when you get into bed," or something like that. It's like, it's making light of these horrific and horrendous situations. You've got to give Scorsese his due with the scene with Harvey Keitel and Jodie Foster in Taxi Driver, and with the scene with Robert De Niro and Juliette Lewis in the school theater in Cape Fear. He has put on camera 2 sequences in which there is no overt violence, and only the slightest sort of sexuality in both scenes, physical sexuality, and yet both scenes absolutely make your skin just crawl up the wall. Yes. You know what I mean? Like you think to yourself, how did Keitel and how did De Niro perform those scenes with the, in the case of Keitel, sort of horribly relaxed calm that he has dancing with this underage girl, and the horrible forcefulness and charm that De Niro performs that scene with. Like, how do they find that in them to do that? I just, there's no way I have anywhere near the ability as an actor to even come close to wanting to do that, let alone being able to do that, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not even your actor qualities that make you not want to do it. Maybe it's just your human qualities. Like, I'd rather... that's a bit of an awkward situation. It's a very awkward situation to be in with a teenage girl. Just in real life, Jodie Foster was 13 years old, and Frank, I'm glad. I like Taxi Driver, but I mean, I don't think it's healthy for her to have played that role. And I mean, this is a completely different topic, but
no, go ahead, dude. Go ahead.
Any director who's not, exploiting a child. Obviously they make sure the parents give consent, and I'm sure yada yada yada. But still, it's like, of all the movies you could make, why do you have to make the one that requires hiring a child to behave that way? That's a little bit unconscionable. A lot unconscionable. I would never do that.
Okay, so I'm interested then. I need to ask the question. There is Taxi Driver, right, where Jodie Foster's parents were on set all day, and although she has to maybe talk about or act like she knows about certain sexual acts, she never is seen in any kind of sexual situation. I don't think. I'm trying to think. No, I don't think she is. Apart from that dancing with Harvey Keitel, there's no sequence in it in which she is anything other than the innocent he is trying to save. We as the audience only see that, right?
Yeah.
And then there is the film The Hole, which was Keira Knightley's first movie, I think, or one of her first movies. And in that movie, again, her parents were on set. And in that movie, she is both seen making out with a guy and sexually objectified and so on and so forth, but also removes her top. And she was only 15 when she was making that movie.
Yeah, shame on everyone involved. Shame on everyone involved.
But not only that, but that's making us as an audience... I don't know the age of the character. I've not seen the whole movie or know or remember what age the her character was meant to be.
You just watch the topless scene over and over.
No, I haven't seen that either. I just know about it. No, you're right. I just watched the topless scene over and over. No, I'm kidding. But what I mean is, that to me is more horrifying than Jodie Foster being in Taxi Driver. I trust everyone on the scene of stage of Taxi Driver. I don't know that it's okay for Keira Knightley to be 15 and be doing that in that movie.
I feel guilty. I mean, we have kids in our movies who have very small roles.
You have kids running a lemonade stand, dude.
Yeah, I know, and I still feel bad because I feel there's something exploitative about it, and I wish that humanity would get together and say, you know what? for the sake of humanity, let's all agree that no one under the age of 20 will be in a movie, you know?
But then you don't have Time Bandits. Then you don't have Neverending Story. Then you have Labyrinth. Then you don't have...
Oh, well. I'm just saying, I don't think it's healthy, to spend all that time on the set with, you know, you're 13 years old. You should be in school and playing with your kids. And B, it's very unhealthy for your face to be on billboards and to be attending the Academy Awards at age 13. And, you know, Jodie Foster seems a little cuckoo. Maybe she'd be a little more grounded right now if she hadn't lived that life.
So you will not be putting either of your two children in your movies then, going forward?
No, that's the thing. I mean...
I thought you'd be exploiting your children the moment they're old enough.
So. I don't think so. I mean, it's a fine line. My movies, for one thing, don't get any... aren't seen by almost anyone. They're just backyard productions, so I don't have to worry about them dealing with billboards of themselves or being nominated for awards. So that's one thing off the list of things to worry about. So, but, you know, I'll give them a couple lines in the movie just so that they're part of the process and having fun with the family. But, I you know, this is way off topic, but, and you know, I'm guilty of enjoying plenty of art that involves, you know, child actors in it. But it's like, would I do it? I don't know, but I'd feel bad about it. And I definitely wouldn't make Cape Fear specifically for that. It's like, you know what? I would just feel dirty just having Juliette Lewis in her underwear in her bedroom with Nick Nolte like slapping her. It's like, there's other ways to spend the day.
There are other ways to spend the day. I think the only reason I would disagree is that I think that I like the fact that there is music and movies about topics, and books for that matter, about topics that should be discussed, should be thought about, should be examined. I think that there is a fine line between talking about those topics and exploiting them. I think, for example, what Scorsese does with Taxi Driver and Cape Fear is very much right up to the line. But I still think that there is a decent enough intent in there. But then if I think about some of the more horrific stories that have been told either in books or movies, or if I think about some of the films of like Lars von Trier or people like that, or, you know, some of the stories about, what was that, The Little Children with Kate Winslet and whatever, and he's one of the guys in it is a child molester. I don't think those movies need to be made. I think it's to do with intent, and I think there's certain lines that can be crossed. And I think that, yeah.
Would you want your daughter playing that Jodie Foster role in Taxi Driver, where she's wearing, you know, these incredibly tight clothing, or she's offering favors to Robert De Niro? Just that. I wouldn't want my kid saying those lines. That's unconscionable.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I don't know. If I had the crystal ball and was able to look into the future and go, Taxi Driver is going to be one of the seminal movies of the 20th century, and this is going to give me longevity in my career. I mean, yes, Jodie Foster seems a little cuckoo, but then she's grown up entirely in Hollywood.
Yeah, and that's very unhealthy. Nobody should be exposed to that kind of.
But I don't think she's cuckoo because she played that character. I think it's more to do with just never having been. Like when I spoke to Clint Howard, for example, lovely guy, but clearly completely devoid of the trials and tribulations that someone like you or myself have to go through. You know what I mean? Just because of his family lineage and because he grew up, like he was 3 years old and was in an episode of his brother's TV show. Yeah. And he has been acting, he's now in his 50s. He's been almost 60s, I think, and he's been acting probably longer than anyone's ever acted. No one's acted from the age of 3 all the way through, you know?
Drew Barrymore.
Drew Barrymore was what, 5 when she did E.T.?
Something like that. And that didn't seem to, like, shame on you, Steven Spielberg. Oh, yes. You got her to say all these cute little lines. Isn't that great? And then 4 years later, you know, she's popping pills at a party. And it's like, you are complicit, Steven. Look, we don't need. We can do another debate about this sometime. I think we're past your deadline. Do you want to do lightning round questions before we wrap this up?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we'll wrap this up. I have one last thing though, sir, just to wrap it back up to the beginning of our conversation. In Fiend, Don Dohler kills his daughter and puts her in the back of an ambulance on screen. Is that unconscionable? Will you go as
honestly, far? That is the right, like, obviously, like, killing. I don't. It doesn't matter that the character died, but like that is the level of involvement that I'm comfortable with. The kids are like behind a log and saying like, "Oh, look over there" or something. If that's the, I know they're in a couple of the movies, but and then they're killed off, a minute later in the plot. So they got to be involved. They had very tiny parts. And she was on a stretcher, big deal. So I'm okay with that.
You're okay. I like that you've defended Don Dohler. That's fine. I'm happy with that. If you had gone into one of your Farley's rants against Dohler, then we might have had words.
If the kids were the main characters, then I would feel very differently. But it's just that nice little thing, and you're like, oh, it's a fun little time between father and children, and I'm fine with it.
Okay, yes, me too. So any more points on Cape Fear other than obviously people should go out and see it?
No, I think we covered it. Thank you for talking to me about it because it's been just brimming up in me since Saturday. I had to get it out.
And was it satisfying? Did I satisfy that itch that needed scratching?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you are an astute film watcher. You don't just let a movie kind of go by. You're watching closely. You see what's happening. You see what's being referenced from the great camera work. And
I'm enjoying it, though. I'm never not enjoying it. And I think that you were right to single out Joe Don Baker, who has been a favorite of mine for years and years and years. He's always good fun.
I love him.
Okay, so before we get into the lightning quick listeners' questions rounds, it's just me butting in to interrupt the show yet again to say, don't forget we are completely and utterly revamping the After Movie Diner website, as well as trying to bring you a podcast every single week and maintain everything that we've been doing with reviews and interviews and videos and everything, which takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. If you want to help and support us, please go over to www.patreon.com/aftermoviediner. That's patreon.com/aftermoviediner and sponsor the show. Or you can go to miskplumbingfixtures.bandcamp.com if you want to buy one of our albums, or you can look up Miscellaneous Plumbing Fixtures on Spotify and stream the albums for free, and we get a little bit of kickback. Either that, or you can donate directly on the website aftermoviediner.com, and all sorts of ways to sponsor and support the show. All is appreciated. All is absolutely fantastic, and thank you. If you don't have the money, then please rate and review us. Rate and review us wherever it's possible. iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, all those good places. Rate and review us, spread the word, share the word, tell everyone about aftermoviediner.com. Tell everyone this is where you get all your movie news and fandom from. We are your one-stop shop. Please help us out, please keep us going, and please support us. Every tiny little bit helps. So please do that thing. Now back to the show. Okay, so first question from Jim, my usually regular co-host and the wonderful Mr. Jim Wallace. He says, and on the subject of remakes, if Matt could have anyone remake River Beast, who would it be, and who would play the best tutor in Rivertown USA has ever seen? Bear in mind, Matt would be paid fat piles of cash to stay far, far away from the project. So in other words, he's saying it would be a remake, but you wouldn't be able to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
You would just be paid bundles of cash, and you'd have to go away. Who would you want to remake it, and who would you want to star as your character, the best tutor in Rivertown, USA?
Let's have our Wes Anderson direct it with. Let's get he and Owen Wilson back for a full length movie. Owen Wilson's playing the tutor, and Wes Anderson's directing.
That's interesting. So, and Wes Anderson does a monster movie. That's kind of one genre he hasn't really done. Yeah,
he's due for that, and frankly, I miss those Bottle Rocket and the Royal Tenenbaums when he was co-writing with Owen Wilson, and that's the prime moments for his career. I liked the hotel movie. It was really good, but again, like you said, it's like when you see them. You know, when I saw Bottle Rocket, I was like 20, I think, or so, and I was just like, these guys, I love these guys, and I rode that wave for a while, and there's been some ups and downs, but it's time for them to get back together and make my movie.
I agree. That would be wonderful, and I would be on board. I, however, would like you and I and Charlie and Tom and everyone to somehow have cameos in it. I don't want us to be far away. I think we need to be in it.
That's fine.
I like how I'm putting me in. By the way, I've just latched on to your group now, and that's it. That's how it's going to be. I'm sorry. There's no getting rid of me now, I'm afraid.
Welcome.
So Peter Osmond says, okay, so modern cinema is filled with beautiful-looking men with rippling muscles, but no hard man personas. Who are your favorite manly hard man actors of days of old?
Man, you got to read this before me. Do you have an answer while I'm thinking?
I do. I like Charles Bronson. I'm a big Bronson fan because I think Bronson has the steely gaze and the weapon handling ability of a manly man, but he has the lispy voice of a little boy, which I think is a hilarious combination. I'm a big Clint Eastwood fan, not as a human being, but as an actor. As a human being, I think he's confused, old, and miserable. But I think as an actor, he's done some tremendous work, and he's definitely got the hard man grit to him. And lastly, Robert Mitchum, to bring it back to Cape Fear. Robert Mitchum, for me, he is everything I look for in an actor. He's awesome.
Yeah, let's give it to Steve McQueen. He's a nice, tough guy.
Sure, that's a good answer too. I agree with that as well.
But
okay.
Much like we said about how the past becomes glorified, in 30, 40 years, people will look back and be like, they don't make him like Mark Ruffalo anymore.
Yeah, as long as they say that about Mark Ruffalo and not Mark Wahlberg, who can go run off a pier. It's so funny because let's say when I revamp the website that like 5 years from now I have to interview like Mark Wahlberg. Let's say suddenly the website takes off. It won't, but let's just say. And I have to interview Mark Wahlberg. Am I going to be a dick to Mark Wahlberg, or am I going to sit there and be like, oh my God, you were so good in that movie, even when it was a piece of crap? Like, it's going to be so interesting to see.
That's the question, and I look forward to finding out. But I mean, I offered you a remake to discuss, and you didn't. You went for it. You know, you could have stuck to your moral high ground and said, I refuse.
No, I've always said that there are certain remakes that I completely accept because I think that first of all, the directors are from a proven training ground of doing their own original material.
There's a huge difference, and I'm just teasing.
Yeah, of course. So Mark Burns says, Desert Island Discs. You are allowed only 3 films to take with you to a desert island. Theoretical question, you would need some form of power. But what 3 films and why?
There's got to be a Hitchcock movie in there, so Rear Window for sure, because
it's brilliant.
You know, you can just watch it over and over again, and I never tire of it. Next, let's go. We discussed it before, Barry Lyndon, because it's sprawling and long. You know, I got time to kill on this island, and every time I've watched it, I've seen something new. It is really good movie. And Stardust Memories. We got to get Woody Allen in there, and that movie. Another one. Each time I watch it, I'm just as happy as I'm happier each time I watch it.
Well, that's fantastic. 3 fantastic picks. It's really difficult for me because there's 50 movies that I want on a desert island. I could take all 3 of your films and be perfectly happy, but I'm not going to pander to you in answering this question. I would probably take Monty Python, The Meaning of Life, because I feel like it has every single aspect of Monty Python in it. It's not their best film, but it has and I think that because it's basically like 8 short films, I wouldn't get so bored of it.
Yeah, totally.
So there's that one. I have to have a Bruce Campbell movie. It's a toss-up between Evil Dead 2 and Bubba Hotep. Bubba Hotep is the better performance, but Evil Dead 2 has the memories, and I feel the excitement. I haven't
seen Bubba Hotep, but I think you should choose Evil Dead 2.
Evil Dead 2. And then I want to say Hannah and Her Sisters.
Nice.
To have a Woody Allen one. But I also want to say Blood Massacre by Don Dohler. Because I think that
you
George
already
Stone
have a horror movie, though.
I know I do.
Yeah.
God, this is difficult. This is really difficult. It has to be Taxi Driver. I'm going to go Taxi Driver.
out of nowhere, Taxi Driver takes it.
Well, because I always have this answer. When people say, what are your favorite films? I have this answer. I go, okay, if it's schlocky films, it's Evil Dead 2 and Blood Massacre. If it's serious, highbrow, thinky films, it's Taxi Driver and Apocalypse Now. They're like my two favorites. And that's just one of those things where if Apocalypse Now or Taxi Driver's on TV, I have to watch it. Just it comes on, I have to watch it. Mm-hmm. Now, I love Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones and all those movies. But, like, if I'm talking top movies, it's those four. So I'm going to have Evil Dead 2, I'm going to have Taxi Driver, and what was the third one? Meaning of Life, Monty Python. I think that would do me.
Excellent.
Okay. So David Brighton asks, which is the biggest distraction in a cinema, I think he means, texting, whispering, or crisp bag rustling?
I get it. I'd just like to go on the record as saying I'm fine. People can talk. People can eat. People can use their phones. It's not. I mean, if they're loud, I'm going to go with whispering. Of those three, because it's like, go ahead, eat your food. Go ahead, check your phone. I mean, if you're talking loudly enough that it's interfering, I'm a little upset.
Yeah, you see, for me, it's texting. I think that the noise of the movie will cover up most conversations. If someone right next to you is whispering, that's a pain in the ass. But, like, most conversations that are being had in the cinema, the movie is loud enough to cover them up. However, nothing can cover up the bright light of your phone in a dark theater. My eye will always go to it, and it will always annoy me. And also, there is no need for it. If you were going for a job interview, you wouldn't get your phone out to text. If you were going to a funeral, you wouldn't get your phone out to text. Like,
well. You just wait. I mean, you're living in an antiquated age where people didn't text during funerals. I mean, the future is upon us, and you're going to have to embrace it because I'll tell you, I haven't been to many funerals lately, but I'm willing to bet that texting happened at 90% of the last year's worth of funerals.
I'm just saying, if there was a place where, and I was trying to think, church, whatever it is, there are certain occasions where people go. If you go on a date, right? You might text.
You go on a date. You put your phone on the table right in front of you. And you check that phone frequently. It's a new world, John. You're going to have to advance or just become obsolete.
Yeah, I'm going to become obsolete happily because texting in movie theaters, I think they should be dragged out into the street and beaten to death with their own phones.
Do we have more questions?
We do. Sorry, dude. I'm keeping you up. What are the top 5 action movies that have not seen a DVD or Blu-ray release that need to be given the special edition treatment? I don't know if I have a top 5, but I want to see every Don Dohler movie on Blu-ray. Action movies that don't have Blu-ray treatments.
I got nothing for that. I'm not an action movie guy, and I definitely don't know what's been released in the action genre.
I mean, I would say anything by PM Entertainment. They all kind of need Blu-ray releases and haven't had them. Anything Cynthia Rothrock is in. I know that there's an Asian Blu-ray of Yes, Madam, but I don't think there's one of Above the Law, and that's a really great Hong Kong action movie. There's probably a ton from 80s and 90s that need to be released. A couple of Dolph Lundgren, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Don't know off the top of my head. Sorry, Max Falkenham, but thank you for asking the question. Peter Osmond offers Ronin is apparently long past a special edition Blu-ray. Current MGM catalog release is awful.
Let me just say there's one movie called The Mean Season. Kurt Russell, 1985, Mariel Hemingway.
Nice.
I don't know what the release situation is, but I know that it hasn't gotten its due for just sheer joy. And in fact, maybe one of these days, if I'm back on the diner, we could discuss it.
Okay, definitely. Peter Osmond then asks, Star Wars, Star Trek, Star Crasher, Starman, and Stargate had a fight. Who would win? The prize is a gold star.
Star Wars would win because it's the best of all those titles.
I massively disagree on that one.
Let's hear it.
I would say either Star Trek or Stargate. In fact, if I was on a desert island and I had all those movies, and I only had movies with Star in the title, I guarantee Star Wars would be the last one I would watch.
It would be the only one I'd watch. On the island, every day I'd be like, what to watch today? Yeah, I'll watch Star Wars again. I have no interest in the rest of those.
Really? Have you seen Wrath of Khan?
I don't know what it is. Just something about Star Trek. It just there's
really, even with William Shatner and DeForest Kelley and Leonard Nimoy, even with the original cast, no interest.
Just seems to be no joy. No fun or.
It's all joy, sir.
Maybe it didn't register to me as a child, and I've never been able to give it another chance.
This is controversial. We're having a controversial moment here.
Good. Controversy sells.
Everyone loves controversy. I couldn't care. I mean, really, Star Wars, Star Trek, really, ultimately, who cares?
Yeah, I mean,
it's just funny.
I think we're both well aware that everything we've discussed tonight is of no consequence.
Yeah. Aaron Carruthers asks, that's a great name, Aaron Carruthers. He says, are there any British films that we should be introducing to Americans? Yeah, I've kind of touched on this in previous Diner episodes. Mona Lisa, Long Good Friday, the original Get Carter, Without a Clue is a great British comedy with Michael Caine and Ben Kingsley. Basically, if it's got Michael Caine or Bob Hoskins and it's made in the 70s or 80s, you really can't go too wrong with it.
There's a movie that we're eventually going to cover on Shock Marathons called House on Straw Hill from the mid-'70s, and it is something else. And stay tuned to my podcast eventually to learn about that one.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to give a big plug to your podcast at the end of the episode, sir. I'm just scrolling through Twitter. This is a great one. A bloke down the pub who writes great Hammer horror movie reviews.
I thought that was you. That's not you?
That's not me, sir. No.
Oh, that's funny. I thought that was just one of your monikers, but that's a different person.
That's a completely different person, and I know who it is, but I'm not revealing it.
Don't.
A bloke down the pub who writes great Hammer horror reviews. Hammer horror is another great, anything with Peter Cushing, Donald Pleasance, Christopher Lee, and all great British movies. Watch all of them. Amicus or Hammer, you can't go wrong. But he asks, this is a great question, what's your all-time favorite monster?
Favorite monster? I'm gonna... who's my favorite monster? Woo! Sheesh. In Return of the Jedi when the big monster that
God, you and Star Wars. No, carry on.
At Jabba the Hutt's palace, I think Luke is dropped down into some pit where he has to battle this giant monster, and he wins. And then as the end of the scene, we see there was another monster that was kind of his keeper, I think. I don't know if it's a human, but
okay.
He's crying. That person is crying. He's got monster qualities to some degree. But he's my favorite monster. But not the one who died, but the one who's crying because his friend died.
Your favorite monster is an inconsequential rubbery alien in Star Wars.
Yeah, but it's like, oh, he cared for that. He was like the carekeeper for this giant evil monster, and he's sad that his friend's gone. And purists might argue with me that could be a human, but I feel like he had at least some monster qualities.
Fair enough. And it's interesting as well because I see that Trash Money or Rob Loves Beard on Twitter also asked the Star Wars or Star Trek question. I'm definitely Star Trek.
All the way.
You're Star Wars. My favorite monster, I could go for the pretentious answer. My favorite monster is man. But I'm not going to say that because that's awful, and I need to be punched in the face for that. What is my favorite monster? Everyone's going to get tired of me mentioning Don Dohler, but screw it. I think my favorite monster is Fiend. I think he's an awesome monster because he's sort of part glowing red space lobster and part zombie. What?
But also part music teacher.
Also part music teacher. Well, not just music teacher. He owns an international music school. He's only been corporeal for a few months. But there is a bit where he's...
urban neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, he sends George Stover off to France to the school over there to do some accounting. So I'm like, really? They have a school in France already? This is
yeah, a lot of questions.
This is an international school. Yeah, so probably Fiend. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If we're talking classic monsters, I like Dracula, but only because I'm a big fan of Peter Cushing's Van Helsing. To me, the only Van Helsing. And every single monster should be taken down by an old British man in some form of tweed coat. I think that the casting of Donald Pleasance, which I believe was originally going to be Christopher Lee in Halloween, is classic because his battles with Mike Myers, certainly in the sequels, take on a Van Helsing stroke Frankenstein quality, I think.
Mm.
Old British man in a long coat, you can't go wrong. He's your monster killer. Whereas in your movie, you have Edo Hootkins, who plays a mean harmonica and likes looking at the picnic babes, but is useless as a monster fighter.
I know, I love it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Look, Matt, that has been an absolute thrill. We're now hearing sirens in the background. They've come for me to take me away.
Great talk. Yeah, this has been tons of fun. Thank you so much for breaking the remake oath, and it was worth it because we've said it many times, but this movie, it stands on its own. It's its own thing, and it is highly recommended and a little bit overlooked, in the Scorsese canon.
And I think if there's any through line for all the films that you and I have covered on The Diner, it's great people doing great work that is so often overlooked.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and that's why it's like we don't need to. We do sometimes, but we don't need to sing the praises of Star Wars and Jaws. Everyone knows, but it's those lesser movies made by sometimes by big names and sometimes not. But and that's what's great is people who keep on making stuff. And some of the stuff gets exalted, some of the stuff just kind of. Is forgotten about, but if it's good enough, it'll get its day. And thanks to you and I, Cape Fear has now had its day.
It has indeed, and I'm already running through other monsters in my head that I would also love. Bub from Day of the Dead, big fan of him, and I think the Gospercaps definitely need their place in the monster pantheon. I think
it's their own language,
yeah, and their own language. So, sir, let us end as we do with you plugging everything that is you as quickly as possible.
All right, listen, all you jerks. Go to moturnmedia.com. It's like modern media, except with a T instead of a D, and check out everything I got, all my music and movies too. There's a whole movies page with many of the movies right there. You can watch them and sit back and enjoy some Dohler-esque homemade filmmaking. And, hey, one of these days maybe I'll make an exciting Cape Fear-esque movie, with Kevin McGee in the Robert De Niro role. That might happen someday.
Yeah, it needs to be, what are we 20 years, 25 years, you said, so another 6 years and you can do it, because we said every 30 years we could do remakes. So in another 6 years, if Hollywood doesn't beat us to it, you've got to make a Cape Fear remake with Kevin McGee.
We're going to do it the informal way, in which it just happens to be a movie about a criminal who has a grudge against his defense attorney, but we're going to call it Fear Cape.
Fear Cape, because he wears a cape.
Yes, Fear the Cape. Oh, that's a great idea.
McGee wears a cape, and it's you and Elizabeth and your kids can be the family, because by that point your kids will be old enough.
No,
to be exploited.
Absolutely not doing it. You're trying. I tried to lure you into the world of remakes. You're trying to lure me into the way of child exploitation.
Yeah. I am. Well, maybe you could have, I think, in which case you have to go the opposite. You have to find a 40-year-old woman and then say she's 15. That's how you have to do it.
It's fine. Look, it's fake. We know it's not real. We're watching a movie on a screen. Nobody thinks this is real life. Right. So let's just suspend our disbelief for the sake of the children.
Yes, I think it would be hilarious, though. You dress her up in like a tiny girl's costume, but she's got to be sort of 60 or something, maybe. Or
yeah, it's fine. Yeah. I think that at the beginning of every movie, now that there's a new rule, no one under 20 can be in a movie, there's just a little disclaimer that says, please, for the sake of the children, please suspend your disbelief. And then the movie starts.
Your favorite movie has to be Grease, then, where all the teenagers in high school are played by 40-year-old actors.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Stockard Channing playing a teenager is the most hilarious thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, it's great. I'm all for it. Because, the teenage years are not everyone's best years anyway. Why are we putting that, why are we preserving that on film?
I agree. And look at, by the time they get to Back to the Future 3, even though it's meant to take place over just a couple of days, like Michael J. Fox is like 50 by the time he's playing. I think he's like 25 in the first movie.
Right, yeah. I remember he's got a youthfulness that shines through. But, I suspend my disbelief all the time anyway, so,
Sure. I don't think Robert De Niro really broke someone's arm and tore their cheek out, so I suspended my disbelief.
Yeah. Anyway.
So that's it. Coming soon, Moten Media's remake of Cape Fear called Fear the Cape, in which a 50-year-old woman will play the Juliette Lewis role.
Oh, that's going to be real fun.
In fact, the person playing the daughter's got to be older than you and Elizabeth. That's the rule. That's the rule. Anyway, sir, it's been an absolute joy, absolute pleasure. I will let you go now. I'm so sorry I kept you so late. And
this has been fun.
Thanks so much, man. And now I am more than a little excited to present what is essentially an exclusive Moten Media song not available anywhere else but this podcast. Take it away, Matt.
Robert De Niro's gonna get back at you if you don't defend him properly. Oh, Robert De Niro's gonna get back at you if you don't defend him properly. Nick Nolte is in so much trouble. Why does he play racquetball with the pretty little clerk? Oh, she's gonna get hurt. Oh. But she will not testify because she knows how it goes. Martin Scorsese's got no excuse for the way he exploits Juliette Lewis. Better to compromise your art than to give that immature little girl this part. Society should throw a mutiny against propping up children to such scrutiny. Society should throw a mutiny against propping up children to scrutiny.